makes my heart break that we have to do this because of the reason. But by the same token, I love talking.
Silence in Hollywood isn't accidental, and it's definitely not free. Most of the time, it's traded like currency, used to shield legacies, protect reputations, and keep billion-dollar images intact. But the silence around Albert Brooks didn't feel calculated at all. This wasn't lawyers doing damage control. This was something heavier, the kind of quiet that comes from pain settling deep in your chest and refusing to move. What makes this sting harder is the history behind it. This wasn't some surface-level industry friendship built on premieres and favors. Albert Brooks and Rob Reiner go back more than 60 years, long before awards, red carpets, and iconic careers. Before All in the Family, before the directing credits, before anyone knew their names back then, they were just two kids chasing laughs, cracking jokes, dreaming big, with no idea how heavy the future would get.
When I was 14 years old. So I'm still in that not believing it stage. I know it happened, but I'm driving around and all of a sudden I actually 2 days ago, I called his number.
So when Albert finally spoke about what really happened inside that Brentwood home, people leaned in, and what came out wasn't polished. It wasn't filtered. It definitely wasn't approved by any PR team. It was raw. Frustration, regret, and anger tangled together, spilling out in a way that flipped the entire story on its head. Most people skim headlines and keep scrolling. They see words like arrest or family crisis and move on without a second thought. But this situation demands more than a glance. Albert isn't just mourning a lifelong friend. He's pulling back the curtain on a breakdown that had been ignored, excused, and quietly brushed aside for years. He's saying out loud what powerful people usually whisper behind closed doors. Up until now, the public narrative has centered almost entirely on Nick, everything framed around unconditional love. Article after article painting Rob and Michelle as nearly flawless parents who gave everything to support their struggling son. And to be clear, Albert never denies that love existed, but his perspective cuts in a different direction. It's heavier, it's uncomfortable, and it refuses to sugarcoat reality. Albert speaks as someone who was actually there, someone who sat in that living room 3 years ago, 5 years ago, even 10 years ago. Someone who watched the situation slowly unravel while others stayed silent out of politeness or fear of crossing a line. He described it like watching a disaster inch closer while nobody wanted to say this isn't okay. He's not attacking Rob for loving his son. That's not the argument. What Albert keeps stressing is that love without limits, love that refuses to face reality, can turn dangerous fast. When love goes blind, when it ignores clear warning signs, it stops protecting and starts enabling. And that's the word Albert keeps coming back to, enabling. Instead of running to a big talk show or sitting across from a celebrity interviewer, Albert chose something quieter but more personal. He spoke privately to a small circle of industry veterans, people who knew Rob before fame changed everything, people who understood the full backstory. Now, fragments of those conversations are circulating, and what they reveal is chillingly honest. Albert didn't speak in vague terms. He gave details. He described one specific night about 8 months before everything finally collapsed. It was meant to be a relaxed dinner. Just Rob, Michelle, Albert, and a few familiar faces. No tension planned, no drama expected. Then, Nick walked in. Anyone who's dealt with long-term family struggles knows that moment. The energy shifts instantly. Conversations die mid-sentence. People exchange looks without saying a word. But Albert says Rob reacted differently. Not with fear, not with frustration, with hope. Heartbreaking hope. Like maybe this time would be different. Like maybe this was the turning point. Albert paused when describing that moment, and everyone listening felt it. Because hope can be beautiful, but when reality keeps proving otherwise, that hope can become dangerous too. Albert met Rob in high school. They were lifelong friends, and he never said Nick was beyond help. He never said Rob failed as a father. What Albert did say is this: ignoring the storm doesn't make it disappear. And that's where his words hit hardest, because this isn't just about one family or one house in Brentwood. It's about a culture that protects image over action, a system that rewards silence and quietly punishes honesty. Albert didn't sound bitter when he spoke. He sounded worn out, like someone who wishes he'd spoken louder sooner. And once you hear his version, you can't unhear it.
Here for the longest time, I don't get to see enough, but it's always a pleasure when you're here. Thank you for bringing him, for doing this.
What am I, dog?
He's my service animal.
Okay.
Fun to look out the window.
And I always knew you guys were friends until I saw this documentary. I didn't know. I know you went back. I didn't know what you go way, way back.
Yes.
Like
The high school, yes.
high school. Is that
we
how
met
you-
in high school, yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and we became instant friends. We met, it was a class. I think we were like 16, 17 at the time. 16.
It remains one of the most embarrassing moments of
Rob stood up the second Nick walked in, arms open, ready to pull his son close, acting like everything was fine. But Nick wasn't there to eat, catch up, or smooth things over. He came with a demand, and it wasn't small. We're talking serious money. The kind people used to patch problems that should have been confronted years ago. Albert says the mood in the room flipped instantly. Conversations froze. Plates went untouched. And then there was Michelle. When Albert looked at her, he didn't see irritation or disappointment. He saw fear, real fear. And that detail matters because that fear didn't start that night. It had been living in that house for years, unspoken and ignored. After seeing that look, Albert says he couldn't stay quiet anymore. He pulled Rob aside, away from the table, out onto the patio where no one else could hear. No soft language, no dancing around it. He asked his oldest friend straight up, "How long are you going to let him hold you hostage?" What haunts Albert now is Rob's response. Rob didn't snap. He didn't defend Nick. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked exhausted, like a man carrying too much weight for too long. Then he said something Albert can't forget. He said, "If I stop, I lose him." In Rob's mind, pulling back meant losing his son forever. Rob truly believed his money, his attention, his constant presence were the only things keeping everything from falling apart. What he didn't realize was that by shielding Nick from consequences, he was slowly inviting the danger closer and closer to home. That's where Albert makes people uncomfortable. He refuses to let mental health become a full excuse. Not something to ignore, not something to dismiss, but not a free pass either. We live in a time where every story turns into an explanation to her. Trauma, pressure, addiction, upbringing, and yes, Nick had struggles. The substance issues weren't a secret, but Albert cuts through that with brutal honesty. He says he grew up around addiction. He saw plenty of people in rough shape, plenty of lost kids, and they didn't cross this line. Albert pushes back hard on the idea that Nick was only a victim of his own mind. He suggests there was something darker, something personal. He believes there was deep resentment, not just frustration, but anger aimed straight at the people who raised him. Then there's the part mainstream coverage keeps skipping: jealousy. Imagine growing up under the shadow of Rob Reiner. Every move compared to legendary films: The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Stand By Me. There's no space to just exist when your last name weighs that much. That eye. Albert recalls a moment years earlier on a set. Someone casually mentioned Rob in passing. Nick snapped instantly. Not playful, not annoyed, furious. Albert says that wasn't rebellion. That was bitterness, the kind that furs when someone feels invisible next to greatness. From Albert's point of view, Nick didn't just want money. He wanted to tear down the image, the legacy, the pedestal. This didn't spiral by accident. Albert believes it was intentional, a move meant to shatter the symbol that haunted Nick his entire life. Now Albert is angry about what he sees coming next. The legal strategy is already forming, and he knows it. The defense attorney, Alan Jackson, is experienced, calculated, and sharp. Albert can see the angle a mile away. Frame Nick as a sick young man failed by the system, overwhelmed by pressure, crushed by expectations, and Albert is terrified it might actually work. He's been warning anyone who will listen not to let the story flip, because the next move is obvious: shift the blame, turn Rob into the problem. So, say he pushed too hard or didn't push enough. Say the Reiner name was a burden. Say the parents somehow caused their own ending. Albert says that's the cruelest part of all. The people who are gone can't defend themselves. They can't explain their choices. They can't push back. And that's why Albert is speaking now. He's not chasing attention. He's stepping in as the voice Rob no longer has. Because if he stays silent, the story gets rewritten by people who weren't there. And Albert refuses to let that happen. Think about the phone call Albert is waiting for. Not the one about delays. Not the one filled with legal language and excuses. The final one, the call that says accountability has landed. And even when that call comes, Albert knows it won't bring peace. It won't refill empty rooms or quiet the noise left behind. This isn't a movie. There's no twist waiting in the last act. No surprise redemption. No swelling music that makes everything feel resolved. Real life doesn't work like that. It just fades slowly, and Albert is standing there refusing to look away. He keeps saying the signs were there. The warnings were real. The discomfort was avoided because avoiding it was easier. The real question isn't whether this story ends. It will. The question is whether anyone actually learns from it, because the media will try to soften it. They'll replay old speeches, show smiling photos, talk about healing and moving forward. Albert is here to remind everyone the wound is still open, still raw, still unresolved. And the hardest truth he keeps circling back to is this: the people closest to us aren't always safe. Sometimes the only person who sees the danger is the friend standing off to the side, yelling into the noise, powerless to stop what's coming. So the question now is simple. Their understander end is standing off to the side, yelling into the noise, powerless to stop what's coming. So the question now is simple.